All right, everybody. So look, before I even get into this video, I have a bone to pick here with you all. Why didn't you tell me that these Keurigs were freaking amazing? Like, I can have a single cup of coffee whenever I want. Like, I've never owned one before, and they're incredible. But anyway, the folks, for the okay, look, I just wanted to make a little quick video here today for you all because I recently upgraded from the iPhone 14 Pro Max to a Galaxy S24 Ultra. And just recently, like as in a couple days or so ago, I actually upgraded from a S24 Ultra to an iPhone 16 Pro Max. But before I actually did the upgrade, whenever I still had both phones, because of course I had to trade in my 14 Pro Max to get the 16 here, I actually asked myself, hey self, how does the 14 Pro Max still hold up here in 2024 in comparison to a new flagship like the S24 Ultra? And well, you know what? Funny you all should ask that because I actually tested that out. I figured, hey, you know what? It seems like it would be a great idea while I still have both these phones in my possession to do a little camera comparison to just show you all how the 14 Pro Max still stacks up today against a new flagship like the S24 Ultra. Now, unfortunately, I can't compare it to the 16 Pro Max because I no longer have the 14 Pro, and I'm not going to be able to match, shot for shot anything on the 16. So it's going to have to be compared to the S24 Ultra. But I mean, whenever you compare two flagships like this here, you know what I mean? You're going to get the same type of high-end result you would expect. You know what I mean? So again, this was just mainly for me, but I figured I would show you all the results here as well too. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and start a little desktop recording here so I can get some sound going on my SM7B here to just, sync this all up in post and whatnot. Okay, that there should be good enough to sync it up here. Okay, so yeah, as you can see here, folks, and I'm gonna have everything, like labeled on screen for you guys and gals as well. But on the left here, we have the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Here on the right, we have the S24 Ultra. This is just a regular front portrait shot without any kind of, artificial blurring effect or anything like that. And you know what? For something like this here, I still think the iPhone 14 Pro Max does look pretty good, not gonna lie. But if we go ahead and go to the bokeh portrait cutout here, as you'll see, of course, the iPhone 14 Pro Max here on the left, in my opinion, does do a really good job still to this day. But if you'll notice, like down here on my shoulders here on the shirt and everything, it does kind of smudge some of that out. Whereas on the S24 Ultra, it has a much more refined cutout. And if you look up here in my hair, it actually looks like the S24 Ultra with its better well, not better, but like with its more modern processing capabilities, that actually kept some of those, flyaway hairs up here. Whereas on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, everything sort of kind of got blurred into the background. But as far as like overall which photo I think looks better, they both look pretty good in my opinion here. Okay, they really do. So for these next shots here, I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to do a portrait style shot on some, some leaves and everything, just to see how well it handles that kind of situation. Now, unfortunately, on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it didn't actually nail the focus where I wanted it to. It sort of kind of back focused a little bit and focused in on this leaf back here. But other than that, though, as far as the actual, bokeh fall off and, I should say the roll off and everything, how it applied the artificial blur and whatnot, personally, I think the iPhone 14 Pro Max did do a pretty good job. Now, I am a much bigger fan of the S24 Ultra's more contrasty, punchy look, but on today's smartphones, you have Photoshop, Lightroom, or even the built-in editing apps that come on these phones now that do a pretty good job at this as well. So if you wanted to, bump up the saturation or vibrance or add some, contrast back in post, or maybe do some dehazing to get the same kind of more punchy look, you totally could, and it really wouldn't be that different in my opinion. But as far as the overall, like, just take your phone out, snap a photo, as far as hitting the focus better, I think the S24 Ultra did a better job. But back when I was using the 14 Pro Max here as my main, my main mobile shooter, it always hit the mark just fine. So it could just be like a little one-off thing here. Now, same thing for the 3x and the 5x lens on the 14 and the S24 Ultra here, respectfully. Whenever I had the 14 Pro Max again as my main shooter for my mobile photography, I would always use the 3x lens for portraits because I think it has a much more natural look to it for that portrait style focal length. You know what I mean? Same thing here for the ×5 on the S24 Ultra. And as far as how both of these look, I like the way they both turned out. I really do. I'm not noticing any kind of like real, artificial bokeh cutoff or anything like that. And yeah, I think these are both pretty acceptable. I really do. Of course, you're going to have the, tighter field of view on the S24 Ultra because again, on the 14 Pro Max, it is a, 3x lens, but on the S24 Ultra, it's the 5x lens. So there is a little bit of a discrepancy there, but as far as how it looks, I think it looks pretty good though. Now for this photo here, I wanted to do something a little bit different, okay? Now, as I just mentioned, the S24 Ultra has the 5x lens, whereas the 14 Pro Max here on the left maxes out with a 3x lens. And in comparison to that right here, they both look phenomenal. I'm not gonna lie, maybe on the S24 Ultra it handled the dynamic range just a little bit better actually inside of the flower. I think you're able to see more details in like the highlights here. The highlight roll off is a little bit harsher, but again, newer sensors, newer style of processing photos, so you can just chalk it up to that. But what I went ahead and did though on the S24 Ultra here as well is that there's also a 12 megapixel 3x lens on the S24 Ultra. So this way here, it's a literal apples to apples comparison. So 3x lens, iPhone 14 Pro Max, S24 Ultra. And yes, again, side by side, I think that the S24 Ultra did handle the highlights and the dynamic range inside of the actual flower a little bit better. But as far as, throwing these up on social media, I think they both look fantastic. Again, I do appreciate the punchier, more popping color of the S24 Ultra. But again, if you throw this in Lightroom or Photoshop on your phone or even the built-in editing apps, you can do the exact same thing. It's not really a big deal. But I know a lot of you out there are still more concerned about, well, hey, how does the actual, video capability of the iPhone 14 Pro Max still, hold up in 2024 in comparison to a modern day flagship like the S24 Ultra here. So these video comparisons you're going to see, it's going to be in bright sunlight outside in perfect lighting conditions here in my office. It's only going to be the front facing camera at 4K 30 with either the standard profile or the cinematic for the artificial blur. And with that being said, let's kind of just jump into it here, shall we? Alright everybody, this here is a front camera video comparison between my S24 Ultra right here and my iPhone 14 Pro Max. Now obviously well, that's a really bright sunlight today. Now it is apparent here that the iPhone 14 Pro Max does seem to have a wider field of view, but as far as overall color reproduction, I think I have to give it to the 14 Pro Max as well. These are both being recorded at 30 frames per second at 4K on each phone. So we're going to go ahead and switch to the portrait video mode now to see how well that looks between each device. Alright here everybody, once again both cameras are shooting in 4K with the front facing camera. Again, even here in the portrait mode, it looks like the iPhone 14 Pro Max does have a little bit of a wider field of view. Right now on the 14 Pro Max, I have the f-stop set artificially to around f2.8. Here on the S24 Ultra, I have it set to the blurriest background, so technically that should be called level 7. Gonna walk out here in the sunlight just to see how well it handles the change in, light here and everything. Get all this pretty color. Beautiful sky today, y'all. Beautiful sky, huh? But yeah, again, we're still really impressed though with this iPhone 14 Pro Max, even in 2024, a couple years after this thing has come out. But either way, folks, what do y'all think? Alright everybody, and for this part here, I figured I would sort of kind of just do it as if I had like a spur of the moment video idea. So I'm recording this here in portrait on both devices. Again, both phones are 4K, 30 frames per second, and you might notice I look a little bit purple, but that is because on both of my monitors here, there is a beautiful purple hour sunset wallpaper. So just checking on how this picks up colors. Alright. Now let's move to a more studio-like environment here, okay? I'm gonna turn on my lights. All right, folks, now once again, both front-facing cameras here are 4K 30, iPhone 14 Pro Max, S24 Ultra. Now I have my monitors turned off and I have my studio lighting here turned on, so just two soft boxes right above my desk. What do y'all think? And you know what, here too, folks, just for good measure, this here is the portrait video mode or cinematic video mode here on the iPhone here in my home office in the ideal lighting conditions again. Other lights are turned off, top lights turned off, but I do have my two studio soft boxes here, two LED light panels. So yeah, looks like the iPhone is holding up pretty good. I got to look at the Samsung on my actual monitor, but yeah, what do y'all think? Like, which one do you think does a better, cutout of the subject here? Again, the S24 Ultra, for being such a big phone, does really have a narrow field of view. Like, in order to get it similar, I would have to put the phone way back here. As you can see, like, it's pretty far ahead of the iPhone 14 Pro Max. But either way, though, folks, what do y'all think? All right, everybody. So, look, do I still think the iPhone 14 Pro Max holds up just fine in 2024? And in my humble opinion, yeah, it does. Especially whenever you're throwing videos up and everything, on like social media, like on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it might be. These videos are going to be compressed to fit the resolution standards and data rate standards for each individual platform to the point to where a nice 4K bokeh-fied video is going to be compressed down to like what 720p anyway, so any kind of compression artifacts you might see will quite literally make both the phones look the exact same on social media. Now, the iPhone series of phones from Apple, they are a little bit more optimized for social media use, especially whenever you're talking about using the camera inside of said social media apps. But as far as, recording something from your camera app natively, then uploading them to social media, both phones in 2024, in my opinion, are still going to give you fantastic results, especially if you're feeling pressured for whatever reason to upgrade from your 14 Pro Max to, let's say, you get a good deal for a 15 Pro Max or even the 16 Pro Max. Like, they give me $1,000 at AT&T for my 14 Pro Max. That's the only reason why I got this thing. Otherwise, I never would have. You know what I mean? So the thing with iPhones and even, Samsung phones or Google Pixel phones these days here is that the hardware is getting so good these days. It, in my opinion, it more comes down to how well the software is optimized, and especially for, like, photos and video, how the software processes the photos and videos on the device itself to actually make them look as good as they can after the fact. You know what I mean? Because a lot of you out there have noticed that whenever you take a photo in the preview on the phone, it doesn't look that good. But after a couple seconds, actually in the gallery, that's when it gets nice and brightened up or sharpened a little bit, or just everything looks a little bit more, high and tight whenever it gets processed in the gallery. You know what I mean? So as far as, again, uploading to social media, if you still have a 14 Pro Max, even a 13 Pro Max, I would dare to say it's still just fine in 2024. Don't be pressured to upgrade if you don't want to, or better yet, if you don't need to. Like, if you can get a good carrier deal, yeah, sure, go right ahead. But if you're in a position to where you have to pay like out of pocket for it, if all you do is social media work, like, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, whatever it might be, even Facebook, I think the 14 Pro Max is still just fine in 2024. But if you're a professional videographer, photographer that needs to shoot stuff in log now, because you can do that on these things and in ProRes, like, that's insane, then yeah, you might want to think about upgrading. But just for your everyday user to where you're like, hey, I want to just pull out my phone and take a selfie, I think you're just fine. But hey, everybody, look, do me a favor. What do y'all think? Sound off down below. Are you holding out on upgrades, or have you got the latest and newest devices from either Google, Apple, or Samsung? Again, do me a favor. Sound off down below, and I'll catch you guys and gals next time.